What's good, everybody? Greg Hickman here. And in this episode, I want to talk about how to get into a creative mindset in our free private Facebook group called the Scalable Service Provider, which you should be in, by the way. One of our members, Michael, asked, Greg, how do you get into a creative mindset? And I actually did a Facebook Live covering this topic, some things that I do. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart and also very relevant from a timing perspective of things that have been going on in my life and my business. So I'm super pumped to share some of these tips with you. So let's hop on over to the Facebook Live that I did in that group and let's listen along. How to get into a creative mindset. Let's do it. For 3 years, my agency built funnels and automation systems for the biggest names in marketing today. Since then, I've transformed that agency into a hyper-profitable training and consulting business. While everyone is out there talking about scale like it's some sort of destination, we'll be asking the real question. How do you transform your business into a more scalable model using the knowledge, skills, and expertise that you already have? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share the strategies I'm using to build my multi-million-dollar business. My name is Greg Hickman, and welcome to Scalable. What's going on, guys? So in this episode, I want to talk about how to get into a creative mindset. Some of you that are in our free Facebook group called the Scalable Service Provider might have seen I asked the group, what questions do you have for me if you want me to record a live episode? So this is it, my friends. This is the first live podcast episode being recorded here. And Michael asked, how do I get into a creative mindset? And the reason why I wanted to cover this topic first is actually a couple reasons. One, over the last 120 days or so, kind of more on the early part of that experience, I went through a little bit of burnout and I felt like I didn't have my creativity. And so this question actually really hit home because there are a lot of things that I did to kind of get my creativity back, so to speak. And so when I saw that, I just jumped to a piece of paper and I wrote down a handful of high-level things that I want to talk about that I've done to really get my creative mindset back. And as entrepreneurs, people that are building businesses, one of my mentors, Dan Martell, made this comment once that said, he said something like, CEOs spend 75% of their time thinking. And at the time, I had been spending like 0% of my time thinking, maybe like 1%. And so I needed to figure out how do I spend more time thinking, right? I was caught up in a lot of the weeds. This is a huge reason why I am in love with systems and automation and helping entrepreneurs tap into and harness them because it frees them up from a lot of the doing in their business and positions them to bring in other people to help with the doing, remove them from certain areas where they're the bottleneck, and allocate that time to thinking and creation. Because if we're not creating as the owner of our business, if we're not creating as entrepreneurs, like we're going to have a difficult time, I think, connecting with our audience, which is going to turn into lead generation, which is going to turn into sales and being able to build rapport, open the doors to new opportunities like speaking and things like that, and also just staying on top of innovation. And so when Michael asked this, it definitely hit home. So first, I kind of want to high level. I'm going to be jumping a little bit back and forth between, camera and iPad. So if you end up listening on iTunes or Spotify or something like that, and you want to hop into the video on YouTube, by all means do so. I think everything I talk through will be perfectly, you'll be perfectly fine to just listen if you didn't have video. So, this notion of creative mindset, right? I think first the question is, which I asked Michael, but I haven't heard back yet, is like, elaborate on this. Why do you feel like you don't have a creative mindset, and what are you doing right now to try to fix that, right? So when I think of creative mindset, obviously I instantaneously just go to creation. Like right now, I'm in creation, and I will show you guys, like, one of my tips is all around how do you manage your time? And I actually have time. I use time blocking, which is something that, is probably not new to many of you as entrepreneurs, but I block my time in a specific way that is like literally called creation time. And I manage a lot of my time in that way, creation time versus managed time. So here's the deal. For me, I was like, let's look at why the not creating might be a problem, right? For me, I felt like I lost my voice. So, I was consuming a lot of information, but I wasn't necessarily creating anything. And thus, I felt like I just sounded like other people, and my thoughts just didn't feel like they were my own, right? And so maybe that's you, where you haven't been creating because every time you've tried, you just feel like you're regurgitating something else. Now, obviously, modeling and taking in good information and then spinning it into your own viewpoint is totally fine. But sometimes when I think you get stuck in this kind of lull, so to speak, of not feeling creative, you probably just feel robotic and that you're creating for creation's sake, and you end up in your own mind sounding like someone else. And that's kind of what I felt like. I felt like I lost my voice. So that could be a problem as to, if you don't have a creative mindset right now. I think another problem is that as I drop my pen, you stall, right? So, and actually to clarify that, your growth stalls. So kind of nearing the end of, what year are we in? 2019? Nearing the end of 2018, I kind of went through this lull. And because of that, our growth like really slowed down. And for me, like, I think the lack of creation actually started then, but the growth stalling kind of hit me about 90 days later. And so this is kind of a high level lesson that you've all probably heard before, but like, your results today are the byproduct of your actions 90 plus days ago. So I kind of got into this lull, and because of that, my creation slowed down and in many cases stopped, right? Every time I would go to create, I just didn't feel like myself. So obviously this podcast is new. This podcast didn't exist. I had ideas for what I wanted to do, but I wasn't creating anything. And so, lo and behold, that caught up with me. And, the beginning of 2019 was a little bit slower than we had anticipated, right? Because of this lag of the actions that I had, in this case, not been pursuing, right? So maybe you're in a position where you're starting to feel the stalling of your business, or maybe stalling in other areas because that are impacted from creativity. And that actually is a result of stuff that you were probably doing 90 to 120 plus days ago. So when you first start trying to figure out, well, what happened, which I think you should do, is if you feel like you don't have a creative mindset or it went away, you should be backtracking and looking at your life and like, what happened? Where was I, 90-ish days ago? What were the things that I was doing? Were anything significant in my life happening? Because that might start to point you to specific areas that you need to focus on, right? So not having a creative mindset, I felt like I lost my voice. The growth stalls. I got disconnected from my audience, I felt like, and prospects. And so when you're disconnected from your audience and your prospects, that'll kind of play out in a situation where you're probably not, your marketing doesn't land as well, your sales conversations don't go as well, right? And it kind of goes back to, growth stalling, etc. But, let's look at then the possibility, right? So the possibility, if you have the creative mindset, is you kind of become, you produce yourself, produce into leadership, so to speak. Like, I'm producing so much content right now, it's crazy. I'm producing content for our clients. I'm producing content for the podcast. I'm producing content and training for my team because we're growing over there. All of these things, like, it allows me to become a better leader because I'm constantly creating stuff that is helping us grow, right? And so we accelerate, and build momentum. As you start having a creative mindset, I'd like to think you'd increase, obviously, what you're producing, increase production. And when I think of production, I look at a handful of different things. And, one of the other questions was, where do you start to systemize in your business? And, this kind of covers that a little bit. When I think of production, like, there's certain areas within my business that I produce, right? This is not just like production, like filming and content. Production is things like marketing, right? Like, this video right now could be considered, marketing. We have advertising. What are we doing there? We have sales. Okay. We have fulfillment. Like, what are we creating to help our clients, get better results? We have, I'll just kind of say team, like, think like HR/ops, put finance in there. I'll just put ops. Ops, that's like things like finance and legal. Like, hey, sometimes we got to create stuff that helps the legal team or our financial advisors, to help us make better decisions. So, like, these are all areas in which you can be producing, right? So depending on what you're trying to create, right? Like, I need to have a creative mindset and room for creation, aka production. And these are areas in which I'm producing in my business. Now, for these four, we focus on things like automation, systems, sequencing, like, what are we doing in the right order, right? People that are filling the gap within certain areas, right? So I'm producing automation systems and things that apply to marketing, advertising, sales, fulfillment. These are the core functions of a business, right? So those are commonly the areas that I want to be producing in. And by having a creative mindset, having the bandwidth and capacity to create allows me to do that. And I think ultimately when you have a creative mindset, you accelerate, but like, you will, I believe, become the best version of yourself. And I think you're going to have a new connection with your market. Like, I'm feeling, I've recorded a lot of episodes at this point. This is going to probably be episode like 29, and we've only released, I think, episode 9 released today. Like, I am producing a lot of content for this show, and like, it's just coming naturally. I mean, this question came in and boom, I'm in production mode right now. So let me share some principles that I cannot spell today. By the way, guys, writing and talking is a skill that I did not realize I didn't have until I started doing this. So bear with me. So here are a couple principles. First, for me, I had to eliminate the noise. Right? Now, some of you might be watching this and listening to this at some point and realize that this is noise for you. And obviously that sucks for me, but like, I want to do what's in your best interest. So like, if you listen to this show, and I would say eliminate noise in that, like, it starts to make you feel bad about yourself or feel negative, and maybe you jump into comparison mode for some reason. like I would call that noise, and you'd want to delete that, right? So I found that there were certain people that I was following, even some that I really respect, that made me feel not good. And so I stopped following them. I installed, Facebook newsfeed eradicator, so I don't really see anything in my feed. I took Facebook off my phone. Every once in a while, I'll put it back on, depending upon the time frame. I usually do it to do videos into our client group if I'm on the go. But deleted Facebook from my phone. I went from, I think I was following somewhere around like 2,000 some odd people on Instagram. I think I follow less than 200 now. And all of the accounts and things that I follow are things that inspire me and kind of get my creative juices flowing, versus going into that mode of I'm comparing myself, to somebody else, right? And you know what? A lot of people want to avoid this topic. I think it's a real problem, and it was a problem for me. And you know what? Even if it was someone that I really like and respect, if I saw it and I went into compare mode and like, oh, like I'm not as good as them, I'm less than, or whatever, like I just hit it, right? I just got it out of my view. So you might need to you might find that your lack of creation is because you now are comparing yourself to something that you shouldn't be comparing yourself to, and vice versa. And now because of that, you're in a creation lull. So first one, eliminate the noise. So for me, delete Facebook app on phone. Facebook newsfeed eradicator was another one. Lower people that I was following on Instagram. I left a lot of Facebook groups. Please don't leave our group. Hopefully we're not that to you. If I am, I'm sorry, but I know it also has nothing to do with me. I lowered my Instagram following count. Now, the second principle is really one of the most important one. Make time for creation. So in my calendar, you'll see that I have creation blocks and manage blocks. And I'll quickly show you that right now. So like, here's a look at my calendar for this week, right? Like I'm in content outline record. Like this is a creation block. You'll see that I even have stuff listed like creation, sales meetings, okay. This is actually, for me, sales is creation. Like I'm creating revenue. I have a creation block here, which is my Wednesdays are my sales calls. Creation, no meetings. This is where I'm working on any ancillary creative stuff. I had a creation block yesterday, which was for some sales. So I have these blocks recurring on my calendar each and every week, right? Now, as I do my Sunday planning, I'll come into the creation block and I'll define what the creation is going to be for. And so I assign that block to something that I'm going to create. This time that I'm in right now, as you can see right here, I'm wrapping up a creation block. And I've made this creation block a recurring creation block where I'm always working on my podcast and creating content. And this will become, obviously, as if you're listening to this, guess what? This is a podcast. So like you got to make time for creation, right? Oh, that's some email copy that we are working on. So you got to make time for the creation. So where on your calendar are you guys creating? I'm trying to do at least 10 hours a week of creation if I can. And for me, that's really like not including sales calls. So finding that time is really important. One of you says almost all of my time is on managing. Yeah, that's not good. How often do you optimize your time blocks? So we plan our business on 90-day sprints, and based on what the goals are, I revamp my own routine pretty much every 90 days. Because seasons change, school's in, school's out. As my son gets older, I'm either running earlier in the morning or later in the day because it's warmer. So like my routine is changing pretty much every 90 days, thus my calendar needs to change. But the notion of I always have creation blocks, I always have manage blocks, always remains to be true. And it's just, where are those on my calendar at the time? So we have like a default calendar that like I put into an Excel spreadsheet. I map it out. In our business, we call it the optimized work week. And it's a methodology that all of our clients go through and our team. We do it every 90 days. We adjust our calendar for, all of the important things, right? So first we start with, self-care and, stuff like family. Like I block all of that stuff first. The vacations I want to go on, when am I running? When am I taking care of myself? That's like the first thing. Then we go into things like, creation. Then I go into things like, manage time. And manage time for me are things like doing tasks that other people need from me within the team. Then we have meeting time. I make a certain amount of time for meetings, potential partnership opportunities, interviews, blah, blah, blah. I have buffer time. Within my self-care, I have, study time. I'm doing some sort of reading or studying every single day. And so like I go in this order and I block out time. And then every Sunday, I plan out my week. And I plan out my week using a system called Bullet Journal. There's a book on it, but like I basically list out, for my week, I can quickly show you. Like for my week, I list out like all of my activities and then I start assigning them to days. So I know like what days I'm working on something. And typically I don't have more than 3 things that I'm working on in any given day. I'll like tire out after that. So do less stuff, but do more of the right stuff. So make time for creation. Number 3 is I'll say create the power needed for creation. So look, you might not have enough energy to create, and that's a problem, right? And this is why, let me go back to this. So create the power needed for creation. And, that's why I focus a lot on self-care and family stuff. Many of you may know, I started following, I adopted a habit system called Core 4. It is originally created by Garrett J. White of Wake Up Warrior, and it's a part of my routine. And basically, I wake up somewhere between 5 and 5:30 every single day. And I go into my Core 4. My Core 4 focuses on, I'll do a whole video on this at some point, but my body, my being, my balance, and my business. Now my business is last. And so my body, I'm sweating, I'm giving myself the appropriate fuel, a green smoothie, I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm making deposits into my relationship with my wife, sharing love, appreciation, and gratitude. I'm doing the same with my son. I'm either reading to him or I sing to him in our car ride to daycare. And then my business, I'm learning something new every single day, whether it's from listening to a podcast or reading a book. And those are basically, for me, based on what I'm trying to learn at that time, because what I think happens a lot, and I was guilty of, back to eliminate the noise, I was learning a lot of stuff that was just in case. So there's a lot of you that might be doing like just in case learning. Like some point I'm going to need this. So like, let me learn it right now. I've been focused on just in time learning. Okay. So like, oh, I want to learn more about leadership because we're going to be going about hiring, or I want to learn about hiring. Like, I'm going to go find the books, talk to people about hiring. Like my consumption will be based on the thing that I need to be focused on. And the thing that I need to be focused on typically is aligned with, our 90-day goals. Okay. So for me, every morning before 9 a.m., I've done more for myself and my mind than most people have done in a week. Right. And so like I've meditated, my mind is clear, I've journaled, I've gotten all of that stuff out of my brain. I've expressed gratitude. I've made contributions into my relationship with my wife and my son. I've learned something new. I'm feeding my brain with something about business that's going to help me grow. And then the last piece about business is declaring it, is sharing it. So that's why you see me post on Facebook or in this group with comments, make videos like this. I share training with my team that I'm creating to share what it is that I'm learning. So the best way to get better at and kind of solidifying what's in your mind is to teach it to somebody else. So every single day I am learning something new, which might take 5 minutes. Doesn't need to be reading 100 pages of a book. Like the second I get a nugget in a book, I'm going to think how that applies to me and my team and or you guys, and I will share that, right? So I get better at teaching, I get better at communicating because I'm constantly doing it. So this starts to build, this is a habit system. The core 4 is a habit system. And many of you, there's a video coming out soon on the podcast. And actually, at the time of this episode, you can go back and listen to it. It's called The 4 Systems of a CEO, because everyone, talks about, the business systems, which is like sales, marketing, delivery, etc. But like all of it starts with you, and you need to have habit systems. You need to have planning systems. We have creation systems, and we have accountability systems. Right? So like these are all systems that you need to start installing as an owner to be able to create, right? Like the reason I have this block is because that I'm able to create 3-5 videos in this block every single Tuesday is because I've done my core 4 already. I've already exercised. I've already done all those things that I just talked about. I've made the time for creation as a part of my planning system because my time blocking, and I know what I need to create because I've planned what I need to create, right? So I get to show up and just boom, I create, right? So you need to create, you need to generate the power required to create. So that kind of leads into number 4, which was know what you need to create, right? I'm not just creating content for content's sake, right? This, I actually went in and said, hey, can I answer someone's question? I wanted to serve, right? So let me answer someone's question. Michael asked a question about how to get into a creative mindset. And this is now why this video and podcast exists, right? This episode. So like, know what you want to create. We operate on 90-day sprints. This is what we teach our clients. And we focus on anywhere from 3 to 5 projects, which boils down to I need to create certain things every single month, 30 days. And then, hey, this week, these are my weekly commitments. Like my weekly commitments this week were to record 2 episodes and at least edit 2 episodes, because right now I'm editing. We're going to be bringing on an editor here soon. So like, I know I'm creating with purpose and intention. I'm not just creating for creation's sake. Okay. And the last principle I'll say is kind of expanding on this. This is more of a freestyle one, is adopt accountability systems. Right? And look, there's only 2 kinds. There's internal and external accountability systems. Internal is you doing the time blocking, you saying, hey, I'm going to show up and do this, right? External will be saying, hey, I'm going to go hire a coach and put myself into a community of people that create all the time and that are all kind of moving at the pace that I'd like to be moving. And I'm going to have them help me be accountable to what I said I'm going to create. Well, that's an external accountability system, a coach, a mentor, having, posting it publicly on Facebook and say, hey guys, like hold me accountable if I don't do this by then. There's free versions, there's paid versions. I've always chosen the paid versions because that's what gets me moving. Like I have money on the line. I've invested into a group of people that want to produce at a high level. That's why our clients come and work with us, because they're around other producers, people producing big things that are sharing their goals, and they don't want to be the one that's not creating when everybody else is creating, right? There's a competitive element to it. That's an external accountability system. So this is what I think you need to be doing in order to get into a creative mindset, right? And actually, I'll do a bonus one, which is almost counter to some of the stuff we just talked about, but is the sixth one will be, I'll say, good input, right? Like, what's the good input? What are the inputs that are coming into your brain that allow you to create, right? Like, I'm learning something new every day as a part of my core 4. So I'm filling my brain with good stuff that is aligned with my business. So when I go to create, I'm filled with good stuff, right? You're only like your output is only going to be as good as your input. Just like if you're trying to get healthy, if you eat a lot of crap, it's going to be tough to get healthy, right? Like what you put in is what you get out. So like I want to put in good stuff. I want to put in just-in-time learning around stuff that is relevant to me and where I want to go as it relates to my 90-day goals so that I can create, right? Consuming for consumption's sake, I think is stupid, and creating for creation's sake is stupid. That's what creates noise. If you have an intent and a purpose around what you're creating, you're going to be speaking to someone. Like hopefully, like right now, I'm speaking to you guys. Like I'm looking at you guys and I'm having a conversation about how to have a creative mindset. And that's how it's done, right? Those 5 principles. To recap real quick, eliminate the noise, make time for creation. We use the thing called Optimized Workweek. It's a tool that we use. Create power that's needed for creation. Know what you need to create. Get an accountability system so that you're held accountable for that creation, and make sure that you're bringing in good input, because the quality of your input is what's going to determine the quality of your output, right? So quality. That's it, guys. That's how to get into a creative mindset, in my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If I gave you 5 to 10 new clients, would you or your agency break? If so, your current agency model is broken. I struggled with this too until I found a better way. By adding online programs, training, and coaching to our agency, we doubled profits without adding more hours. If you want to work directly with me and my team to transform your agency, visit myscalablebusiness.com to learn more.